Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bird Notice. Billy and Ryan here. This week, the Orioles have 4 All Stars. Gunnar Henderson is named AL Rookie of the Month for June. Nick Vespi is recalled from the Tides. And Keegan Akin is placed on the injured list with lower back discomfort. But Ryan, what episode number is this?
This is episode number 15, and that reminds us of two former Orioles. The first I looked into was Hoyt Wilhelm. He's a Hall of Fame knuckleball pitcher who played of his 21 seasons with the O's. He played in the majors from age 29 to age 49, which is an interesting span of your life to start and end your career. And he appeared in 1,070 games in his career with 52 starts, and 43 of those were with the O's, which is an interesting factoid about his time in Baltimore specifically. And the second number 15 I have is Davey Johnson. He played 8 seasons with the O's, winning World Series rings in 66 and 70. He won 3 Gold Gloves at second base and later managed the O's in 96 and 97. He won the AL Manager of the Year in 97, but the O's lost in the ALCS both of those years. And Davey Johnson won a ring as manager with the 86 Mets World Series champions. And in addition, in his time with the Orioles, he was a 3-time All-Star. And speaking of All-Stars, Billy, who's going to be representing the O's this year in Seattle?
Oh, we got first time All Star Austin Hayes, Felix Bautista, Yanir Cano, and Adley Rutschman.
Yeah, all first-time All-Stars by my count, unless I'm incorrect there. But this is the first time since 2016 that the Orioles have had more than one member of the AL All-Star team. So, Billy, I do have a trivia question for you. I'm putting you on the spot. Who were the 5 2016 All-Stars for the O's? I'll give you a hint. It is 2 pitchers and 3 position players.
So I'm going to have to start with Adam Jones and Matt Wieters.
Wieters is correct. Adam Jones is not.
The pitchers are going to be tough. They were so forgettable. Um,
All right, I'll narrow it down. They are not starting pitchers.
okay. I'm blanking on the closer at that time. I keep thinking George Sherrill, but that is nowhere near correct. Oh,
No,
Zach Britton.
yes, very good.
Darren O'Day.
Nope. This is a different righty.
Brad Brock.
Brad Brock is correct. So now we need the 2 non-pitchers, I'll say. One of them is kind of a DH. You have Wieters. We have 1 position player and 1 who was more of a DH.
Nelson Cruz.
Nope. That was after him.
I want to say Markakis, but I don't think that's right.
Nope, not him either.
Chris Davis.
Nope, one is an infielder. The other is a right-handed DH type who may or may not have been the reason that they stopped doing the pies after the game, according to rumor.
Oh, okay. Mark Trumbo.
Yes. The other one, you're going to kick yourself.
It's Machado.
It's Machado. You're right.
Ooh, that was a struggle.
Yeah, those were tricky, actually. I would have had trouble too. And as I said, I put you on the spot. So, no reason to be questioning yourself. But that was the last time the O's had more than 1 All-Star.
It's hard to believe that was 7 years ago.
It really is. It's also hard to believe that none of those guys have been on the O's for like 3 years at this point.
How do you feel about every team having an all-star representative?
I get it. I think it's silly. I thought it was sillier when they had the home field advantage being determined by the All-Star game because
I like that.
When you have somebody who's not even going to sniff the postseason affecting home field advantage, I think that's pretty dumb. But on the other hand, I also don't really know a way to make the All-Star game more interesting these days because I don't know where the line was or how it gradually became less and less important to players. And frankly, I don't really blame them because they have a lot more incentive to stay healthy and not really go all out. But that was an attempt to make it more interesting. But on the same front, I think it was kind of dumb to do that.
Yeah, I like both of those. I like the every team needs an all-star rep. Growing up watching the Pirates in mid to late 90s, they were terrible. So, like when Tony Womack made the all-star team, then you'd see a commercial, come see all-star Tony Womack for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like, I get it. You got to give those teams somebody to market.
Right. I actually wouldn't have remembered Tony Womack as a Pirate. I think of him on that Diamondbacks team that won the World Series.
Yeah, he started with the Pirates.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the All Star game. I used to watch all the All Star stuff. Now it's like if I am sitting down at the TV and there's nothing else on, I'll flip it on, but I don't really care.
I watched the entire game last year. I couldn't believe it. I didn't plan to at all.
That is surprising. I couldn't do that. I really don't even want to watch a lot of regular season games all the way through. I mean, I guess at the same time, these are all the best players. It should be fun, but as we've said, they don't all care. And I don't know. I'd rather watch a halfway decent player trying hard than an all star just kind of going through the motions.
I think I liked that it was at Dodger Stadium last season, and then the players being mic'd up was really cool. Like watching Cortez and the Yankees catcher Trevino have a conversation during the game. I thought was interesting.
I remember Manoah being mic'd up. Was that last year too?
Yeah, that was last
I
year.
know we've talked about how he was sent down to the bottom rung of the minors, but he was good last year, and I remember thinking he was pretty interesting to listen to.
He pitched in Double A last night for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats.
And he did better apparently.
Adley's going to be in the home run derby. That's a little surprising.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about that. I don't think of him as like a super power hitter, but he also could be one of those guys like Ichiro apparently could just go yard whenever he wanted in batting practice. So maybe Adley's like that, but he prefers to take a different approach when in the game. I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see what side of the plate he hits from, or if he'll switch during the contest.
That is a good point. I actually don't even have a guess as to what side he'll be without looking at his numbers. I would guess lefty because he probably does that more just because there's more right-handed pitchers, but who knows? Well, actually, Seattle is Seattle shorter in right or left? I don't know. That might affect it too. That might give him an advantage actually because he can choose which short porch, if there is one, to go for.
Yeah, I don't know the Seattle Stadium too well. What's it even called now? It's not Safeco anymore.
T-Mobile maybe.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that's what I think. I would have thought Safeco, but because you said it was not Safeco, I was like, oh yeah, they did change it.
Have you ever been there?
No, I have not. I have not been anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. I'd love to go someday, and I will, but I have not been. And it's kind of neat. Adley's from Oregon, so that's the closest major league stadium I would imagine to where he's from.
And he's a former Seattle draft pick.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. How they drafted him really late when they knew he was going to college.
Yeah, the 40th round or something like that.
Right. So should we get into the O's this week?
I have an honorable mention for number 14.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that,
let's hear it.
no, we're number 15.
We're at 15.
Yeah, I got Doug Drabeck.
Mm-hmm.
He won
I did not know he was an Oriole, to be honest.
I totally forgot. I may have known at one time, but yeah, he won the 1990 NL Cy Young Award with Pittsburgh. He was the ace of the early 90s Pirates that won 3 straight NL East Division titles. Back when that was the only way to get into the playoffs, he left Pittsburgh to sign with his hometown Houston Astros, where he pitched from 93 to 96. He spent 97 with the White Sox, Signed with the Orioles for the 98 season, which would be his last, going 6-11 with a 7.29 ERA in 23 games, 21 starts.
Wow.
Then I have another note. His son Kyle was a first round draft choice, number 18 overall in the 2006 draft. He was the main prospect sent to Philadelphia in the Roy Halladay trade.
I was gonna say I forgot about Kyle Drabeck, but when you mentioned his name, I remember him being on Toronto, and that fits their current MO of having all these sons of major leaguers, right?
Yeah, he hasn't pitched since 2016 in the major leagues. He's still only 35.
Wow. Back to Doug, those numbers you cited, the fact that he was able to start, would you say 22 games and he had a something ERA, like that's kind of disturbing that he started that many games and pitched that poorly, unless he gave up 100 runs in his last 3 starts.
Yeah, I don't know what happened that year. 7.29 is abysmal. Yeah, 21 starts in 23 games. So we ready to cover some games?
Yeah. So last time we spoke was Monday night, and we didn't talk about the game that was happening, so we'll get into that. But the O's, since we last spoke, have gone 2-4, including that Monday night, which, since I've been tracking their weekly record for our recordings, which is the 10th week now, this is the worst one they've had.
Yeah, it was a good time to do it because I saw a stat from at O's Fan Therapy. The AL East in the last 20 games, the Rays are 10-10, the Orioles are 11-9, the Yankees are 9-11, the Blue Jays are 9-11, and the Red Sox are 11-9.
Well, I guess in the grand scheme, that's good for the O's that everybody else has been pretty mediocre.
Yeah, that was as of today, set on July 3rd.
So I gave a brief Reds preview on the last episode. I'm not going to get into it again, but basically they were really hot coming into Baltimore, and they ended up winning the series. On Monday, the O's won the first game, however, 10-3. What do you have on that one?
Yeah, this was Brandon Williamson versus Cole Irvin. This was Jordan Westberg's debut.
Mm-hmm.
He started the game at second base. It was a rough first inning for Cole Irvin. He gave up a leadoff double. Jonathan India singled, and then there was runners on the corners for Spencer Steer, who drove in a run. Irvin struck out Ellie De La Cruz, and Ramon Urias made a great snag on a ball down the line, or this inning would have been a disaster.
Yeah, that had double written all over it. That was a really nice play by Arias. And also De La Cruz, I was kind of surprised he took that first curveball that was just low, and then Irvin threw another that was clearly a strike. But I think overall he was okay in his 3 innings, but as we know, there was a rain delay after that, and he didn't come back out, which usually makes sense for the starters. So he ended up with 3 innings, 1 earned run with 3 hits allowed, no walks, and 3 strikeouts.
Yeah, it was an hour and 44-minute rain delay. Games like that are just terrible to attend.
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, I'm going to go on a tangent here. I was at a Rochester Red Wings game years ago, and I can't tell you the exact year, but it was when Jabba Chamberlain was on the Yankees, so like early mid 2000s. And there was a rain delay at the Red Wings game. Everybody just walked into the concourse that was covered, and they had some bees up, and they were showing a Red Sox Yankees game, and Jabba Chamberlain was pitching and doing very poorly, and there were these Yankees and Red Sox fans like yelling at each other and basically started a brawl over Jabba Chamberlain's pitching performance during a rain delay at a Red Wings game. And that's another thing I'll never forget. It was very entertaining to just kind of stand there and watch.
I remember watching that playoff game against Cleveland where he was covered in, what are they? They're called midges.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure what those are, but I do remember that. And I also didn't feel bad for him or the Yankees whatsoever.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Um, Brandon Williamson, I found him to be incredibly irritating. He had a very punchable face. He kept claiming to have multiple pitch violations with 1 second left on the clock.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier in the year. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but there was one, was it Dylan Cease maybe, where the pitch com kept like flying off his glove or something? And it was maybe Jim Palmer or somebody mentioned that that's a good way if you're a pitcher to try to slow down the game is make that happen or pretend there's some type of issue. And maybe that's what he was doing, was just kind of playing the clock a little bit.
Yeah, if it goes to zero, your pitch comm shouldn't be a factor in that. If they know how to use signs, if you get down to 4 seconds or whatever, flash a sign down.
Am I wrong in thinking that in football, after a certain time on the play clock, it cuts out? Is that true, or am I imagining that?
Oh, I think you're thinking of the headset.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what the time is. It's like 10 seconds or something like that.
right. I feel like they should do that in baseball. Like in another effort to speed up the game, maybe say, hey, if you don't have a pitch called by 15 seconds or something, then you're SOL. Figure it out.
Yeah, you go back to the fingers.
Right.
Westberg was able to draw a walk after going down 0-2 in his first at bat.
Yeah, I thought that was impressive, especially because it basically started pouring while he was at bat, and I don't think that's necessarily an advantage for the pitcher because it's hard to hold on to the ball when it's so wet, but it's certainly not easy when you're batting. So I thought that was really impressive. If I remember right, he fouled off at least one or two pitches. So that was a nice at bat. It was a good way to start. And it's also, a lot of people mentioned that Adley and Gunnar and Westberg now all have been their big prospects to come up and have shown a lot of patience, which is not typical with young players.
After two more Williamson walks, the bases were loaded with 2 outs for Austin Hayes. Career, he's 8 for 22, batting 364 with 22 RBI. He drove in McKenna and Westberg to make it 2-1 O's. And then, of course, the rain delay came after that.
Yeah, and the O's ended up bringing Bruce Zimmerman into the game after the rain delay, and he got the job done for his first couple innings. He allowed 2 runs in the sixth, but the O's were already up handily at that point.
Yeah, he got sent down later in the week. Um, Nick Vespi, I guess we'll get to that game later, but he was amazing.
I agree. I have a note about him later as well.
Yeah.
This game, the O's had 9 walks in the game. Cincinnati had 3. And 4 of those 9 Orioles walks ended up scoring, and none of the Reds did. So I feel like that was a big difference in this game.
Yeah, they were walking all over the place. There's all kinds of deep counts, too.
It reminded
Westberg's first
me,
major league hit was on a full count.
yeah, that was kind of like the bloop over the shortstop, right?
Yeah, and that put the O's up 7-1.
Uh huh. And then he also got his first RBI on a different play. I believe it was a fielder's choice, but he knocked a run in. So he had a really solid overall game in his first. He also made a real nice backhand flip to Mateo for an out at second. It couldn't quite get the double play, but it was impressive seeing him get to the ball and be able to get it out of his glove with only his glove hand. He flipped it with his glove to Mateo, and Mateo, as we know, is a great defender as well. So that was good to see.
Yeah, right before that play, there was a ground ball up the middle. Mateo and Westberg had a scary moment where they collided.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to see that for sure. I don't know if it's because I'm watching more this year or what, but I've seen that happen a lot. There was one the Twins had earlier this week where Royce Lewis and Carlos Correa kind of ran into each other, and it's a very fundamental thing in baseball. I don't know if it's because they can't hear each other on the field or what, but going for a ground ball is different than a pop up, I should say.
I just saw on the bottom line of the game I was watching before we started recording it, Royce Lewis is out like 6 weeks now.
Yeah, he what did something to his oblique or something? That's a guy
Yeah,
who was a big prospect and just can't stay healthy.
yeah, not at all. Bottom of the seventh, O's scored 3 on Hayes' ground rule double, and then Rutschman single to make it 10-3, and that'd be our final score.
Yeah, Hayes ended up with 3 RBIs. Adley had 2. Another stat is that the O's had 5 players with 2 hits each. Hicks and Mateo were the only starters without a hit, but Hicks had 3 walks and Mateo had 2. So overall, top to bottom, the O's lineup did great. But for the Reds, Spencer Steer had a really good game. You mentioned him earlier. He ended up going 3 for 3 with 3 RBIs, including a 2-run homer. So he was really the only offense that Cincinnati had that night.
Yeah, he's good. I got him on my fantasy team.
Very nice. Speaking of fantasy and whatever, do you have 3 stars for this game?
I do, but before that, Westberg was not the only player to be making his major league debut in this game. 26-year-old Jake Wong pitched the final 3 innings for the Reds, allowing 6 hits and 3 earned runs. He immediately got DFA'd after the game.
That's a bummer. I was gonna say while you were talking that it was definitely not as good a debut as Westberg, but I didn't even realize that they had a major league debut on their side.
Then the 3 stars. Number 3, I got the bullpen. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 earned run, all by Zimmerman on the Steer home run.
Mm-hmm.
Then Baker, Bauman, and Perez went 3 hitless. And there was a great play by CNL Perez to end the game on a line drive that tried to kill him.
Right. Yeah, that ball was smoked. That was pure luck, basically.
Yeah, he didn't even know he caught it.
No, it looked like it hurt his hand a lot too. He was trying to act like it didn't, it looked like.
And then number 2, Ramon Urias, he made a bunch of great plays at third. He threw out India on a tough play that De La Cruz had hit. He was also 2 for 5 with 2 hits, 1 RBI, and 2 runs scored.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a stat that he's batting .310 with 19 RBI with runners in scoring position this season.
Geez, without looking at it, I feel like that's got to be the best on the team. It seems like that's been a big weakness of the O's this year, is hitting with runners in scoring position.
And then number 1 was Jordan Westberg, 1 for 4, 1 run, 1 RBI, 1 walk, the Gold Glove play on the flip, and he got caught stealing once.
You want to round out that stat line. So, caught stealing? Sure.
Yeah, you got to keep these rookies in check. You can't let their heads get too big.
Right, right.
His uniform was filthy after the game.
Hey, that means he put in a lot of effort. You don't want to come in with a completely clean uniform, especially when it's raining, if it's your major league debut. That's one of those things where just to show the coaches that you're trying hard, you intentionally dive for no reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the only game that the Orioles would take in this series against the Reds. On Tuesday, the O's lost 3-1, and this was basically Andrew Abbott dominating the O's and Tyler Wells pitching very well, but not quite as well.
Yeah, I had to look up Andrew Abbott in this. I was pretty surprised to see that he started the season in Double-A.
Yeah, I had actually heard of him because I read something about that Keith Law had written, and they had called up some other pitcher, and he was saying that it should be Andrew Abbott. So, like you, I went back after this game and looked at where he was ranked before this year, and MLB.com had him 5th in the Reds organization, and Keith Law had him 10th actually on the Reds list for prospects. So he was definitely not their top prospect, but he really pitched like one in this game.
Yeah, he's a second-round draft pick out of the University of Virginia. In 4 starts coming into this game, he was 3-0 with a 1.14 ERA and 23 2/3 innings pitched.
Yeah, and despite Abbott having a great outing, the O's got on the board first when Hicks, Westberg, and McKenna combined to manufacture a run on McKenna's sac fly. But the bad news is that they only had 2 hits the rest of the game. They had another Westberg single in the 4th and a Gunnar double in the 8th, and that was kind of all the interesting things that happened with the O's in this game.
Yeah, Friedel bunted his way on, which was kind of annoying because Wells hadn't allowed a base runner to that point in the game. That was in the top of the 4th.
That's what you got to do. I've always thought people get mad when somebody will break up a no hitter in like the 8th or 9th with a bunt, but if it's a close game, do what you got to do to get on base. And Friedel and McLean really combined to be the Reds' offense in this game.
Yeah, McLean doubled him in after that bunt to tie it up at 1. And then McLean homered in the top of the 6th, which pretty much ended the game.
Yeah, and then Friedel did the same off Baker in the 8th. So Andrew Abbott finished with 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 2 hits, 3 walks, and 8 strikeouts. Wells had 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 4 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. So 2 really good starting pitching performances. The interesting thing I found about this game is that the O's still walked 6 times in this game, but only one of those scored. Whereas in the Monday game, 4 out of 9, as I mentioned, ended up scoring. So that was a big difference for Cincinnati in winning.
Yeah, they left 9 on base in this one. In the bottom of the 7th, Mullins pinch hit for Urias. Mullins drew a walk. Then he got caught stealing on a pitch out, and the next batter, Westberg, would walk. O'Hearn would ground out, and Frazier would be hit by a pitch. Now Hayes is up. They're down 2-1 with a runner in scoring position, and he took 3 strikes looking to end the inning, stranding 2.
Yeah, having Mullins get thrown out, I like the aggressive move, and I don't think he would have scored even if he was safe after all that. But they reviewed that one, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and I think he was clearly out there, unfortunately, but that was kind of the last shot the O's had there.
Then we had another rain delay in this one, hour and 43 minutes in the top of the 8th.
Yeah, 2 in a row, and top of the 8th. At that point in the game, I was just wondering if they would continue because it's an official game at that point, and granted, it's in Baltimore, so they're going to be pushing to finish it and give themselves a chance to win. But I also was wondering, since they were still in town on Wednesday, if they could possibly have finished that game. I'm not sure what the policy is on that, but either way, they ended up finishing it and they lost.
In the bottom of the 9th, the highlight of the game for this was Ryan O'Hearn went to second base, and he thought it was like a foul ball or something. He started wandering back to first. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was bizarre. I've done the same. It was not in a major league game or even a college or high school game, but I've definitely been on base. I remember being on first base once, and I thought the batter struck out. I thought it was the third out, so I just started walking away, and then they threw the ball over to first baseman, and he tagged me out, and I was just like, "What the hell?" And I kind of, it was my fault, but I also was like, "Hey, first base coach, like, you should know how many outs there are because I'm too dumb to know. You need to let me know."
Yeah, O'Hearn looked like he saw a ghost when he was able to collect himself after the
Uh huh.
ball went into the outfield.
Right, right. So overall, not a good effort by the O's, and that would kind of be a harbinger for things to come over the rest of the week. So after that 3-1 loss, the O's again faced the Reds to finish off their series, and this was kind of an ugly one. They lost 11-7, and my big note here is that this was the second bad start in a row for Kyle Gibson.
Yeah, he was. I did not expect another bad start in a row from him.
Yeah, if he makes it 3, then I'll start to get worried. But his last 2 outings combined, he's gone 7.2 innings, allowing 11 earned runs, 16 hits, 4 walks with 9 strikeouts. So pretty uncharacteristic. He's at a point in his career where you wonder, oh, is he getting, old or tired? But at the same time, he's been around long enough where you think he's got to be used to handling a workload like this. So hopefully it's just an aberration and he gets it back on track soon.
So Jordan Lyles is 1-11 with a 6.68 ERA on the season.
Man, I have not checked up on him in a while. That's ugly.
He had a better ERA in June than Kyle Gibson did.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's going to be forever compared to him in the eyes of small-minded Orioles fans like us.
Yeah, in 5 starts in June, Jordan Lyles has a 5.40 ERA, and in 6 starts, Gibson has a 6.84 ERA.
All right. Well, it's July now, so hopefully he can turn a new page.
It looked like he aged 5 years last month.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. If I wanted to spend more time, I could look into his velocity and pitch selection and things like that, but I didn't. So I'm just going to say he was kind of bad and hopefully flips things around.
Yeah, and it started out bad. 30 pitches in the first inning, 3 earned runs on 3 hits, a hit by pitch, and a walk.
Yeah, that was rough. But luckily the O's got on the board. I act like I haven't talked much. In the bottom of the first, they took a 4-3 lead off of Luke Weaver on 3 singles and a bases clearing triple by Gunnar, followed by another walk and another single that didn't contribute to those 4 runs. So, luckily for the O's, Luke Weaver was not much better than Gibson, allowing 4 earned runs in 4.1 innings with 6 hits and 2 walks with just 2 strikeouts.
Yeah, the Reds used 7 relievers in this game.
Yeah, and in the second inning, the Reds got the lead right back with 3 more runs on 3 singles and a double. So after 1.5 innings, it was a 6-4 ball game, which is not something you see very often. But the final score of 11-7 means that not a lot happened after that.
Yeah, only 3 starters combined from both teams were held hitless. So it was a hit parade, but it all happened early.
Right. Yeah. If you paid your money, you could have left after the second inning and seen the majority of this ball game. One thing the O's saw was Cano have kind of a rough outing. The Reds were able to stretch their lead to 7-4 off of him on 2 singles and a steal. But right after that, the O's continued the trend of scoring in bunches as they tied the game in the bottom of the 8th when Westberg doubled to score Aaron Hicks and Frazier homered. And it was a 7-7 ball game despite that crazy start.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when Frazier hit that home run. He did a no door.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of the year, I would have said, "Oh yeah, Frazier hit a clutch hit." That's not anything new, but the last month or two, he's gotten to the point where, kind of like Odor, you're kind of surprised if they do hit the ball. But that was big, that was exciting, and it all came crashing down in extra innings for the O's.
The ninth inning was crazy where De La Cruz led off with a hit. He stole second. The Reds were running wild all game. Adley was just turfing throws into second base.
5 steals, right? If I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Senzel had a bunt base hit, and De La Cruz went to third, and then Bautista struck out Votto and Steer, and then he got Newman to ground out.
Yeah, Bautista's been huge, not just in stature, but overall, he was excellent this month, as we'll get to a little bit later.
Where would they be without him?
I don't know. I mean, aside from Bautista, Cano has clearly been great. Hulom has been good. Other than that, they probably have. There's got to be numbers around it, but I would guess a handful less wins without Bautista.
Yeah, I'd say at least 3.
Right. I would agree
And
with
that
that.
feels conservative. And then at the top of the 10th, we got the Keegan Akin show.
Your favorite player.
He 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 4 runs, 2 earned, 1 walk, 1 home run, 2 strikeouts on 38 pitches.
Yeah, I was watching the end of this game with my dad because we were traveling and visiting them, and he said, he doesn't watch a ton of O's games. He said, "Who's this pitching now?" I said, "It's Keegan Akin. I fully expect the Reds to score here," and they scored a lot.
Yeah, he's like a human black cloud.
Well, speaking of the bullpen, the only reliever who got at least 2 outs and didn't allow at least 2 base runners was Bauman. So, got to give him some credit in this game. But overall, things were fun and exciting until that 10th inning, which was just a total downer.
Yeah, that's all I got on this game.
Same. Do you have any stars?
No, nothing we didn't already talk about. Keegan Akin would be placed on the injured list the next day with lower back discomfort. Do you think we'll see him again this season?
Do I think or hope?
Think.
I think at some point, just because of injuries and how baseball is, we'll see him again.
Do you think this is one of those phantom injuries, or do you?
Mm,
It is convenient.
it is a convenient injury, especially because it's not even an injury, it's discomfort.
Yeah, I
He has,
expected him to be removed from the roster on Friday morning, so I was surprised when I saw it was a move to the injured list.
can you go on the injured list with ERA discomfort?
Just
Because I
bad
think that's,
vibes.
yeah. that, I wonder if that could fly. Once Gen Z takes over the front office in like 20, 30 years, there'll be guys on the IL with bad vibes.
Bad vibes.
So that concluded the series with the Reds, and the O's stayed at home, and the Minnesota Twins came to town. My brief Twins preview is that the Twins really rely on winning low scoring games, as they're a bottom 10 offense in scoring, but currently, as of today, are first in the league in runs against. And that was really the case against the O's because the Twins scored 10 runs across 3 games, but they allowed only 3. They don't have any offensive qualifiers with an OPS of 800, but they are fourth in baseball in both starting rotation and bullpen ERA. So the Twins are kind of a small ball team, and they pretty much took it to the O's, despite the O's taking one of these games.
Yeah, this was floppy
Floppy.
floppy hat night. Yeah,
Flappy.
floppy hat night.
They should do Flappy Hot Night. I don't
Flappy
know.
bird.
I don't know what that
The
would be.
Orioles were, yeah, the Orioles were a flappy bird in this game.
Right. Well, you're.
Yeah,
Do you wanna talk about your favorite starting pitcher named Dean?
yeah. I'll get to Dean. Floppy hat night. They're going for $30 to $40 on eBay. So to Dean, we did give him the nickname Dizzy Dean last week, and he made me dizzy this game with all
Yeah,
the home runs he was giving
I
up.
think he was a little dizzy up there because he was not good.
Yeah, that was a bummer. 3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 7 earned, 2 walk, 5 strikeouts, 1 hit by pitch, and 3 home runs allowed.
Yeah, I had 2 home runs allowed on mine. I wonder if I missed one.
I have one to Joey Gallo, Max Kepler,
It
and
it doesn't matter. 2,
it felt
3,
like 3.
a loss is a loss. But yeah, Kramer was not good. And the Twins, on the other hand, rolled out the 2022 fantasy offseason target of many Orioles fans. That was Pablo Lopez. He went 6 innings, allowed 1 earned run, 3 hits, 3 walks, and 6 strikeouts. So he was certainly good in this game.
Yeah, the Orioles, I mean, this makes sense. So this is going to be pretty obvious, but they really struggle against the other team's top starters. We saw Barrios shut him down, Pedro Lopez in this one, Andrew Abbott, I guess he's an ace now.
So far, yeah, I mean, this was also one of those games, though, where no matter how bad Dean Kramer was, when you only score 1 run, you can't really blame it on him. And that's kind of what happened. The Twins got out to an 8-0 lead in the 4th inning. Buxton hit a 3-run homer off Zimmerman, which scored 2 inherited runners from Kramer after he walked and hit somebody. So that was the game, basically, and the rest of it was pretty boring.
Yeah, the Orioles had an opportunity in the second with the bases loaded and 2 outs for Mullins. He just flew out to right field on the first pitch.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the numbers, but he seems to have kind of hit a cold spell this week. And the O's did end up scoring a run when Adley hit a solo homer in the 6th inning. That was only their second hit of the game at that point, and the only extra base hit that they would have all game.
So I like bringing up when the Orioles are facing a former teammate or former Orioles player. We didn't get to see Jorge Lopez in this one. He was placed on the injured list on June 21st with mental health issues. The team had approached him because he was punching stuff and kicking things after bad performances.
Geez, I actually did not know that. That's kind of disturbing. I hope everything's better.
Yeah, I wonder if that might have led to his trade last season.
I don't know. I don't want to speculate about that. I think the O's
That's
mainly
fair.
traded him because they knew he was doing really well, and probably those peripherals were not going to hold up.
Yeah, cash in on him. Um, this was the Nick Vespi game.
Yeah, that was my positive note. He went 3 innings with no runs, 3 hits, no walks, and 3 strikeouts. So he was not having lower back discomfort in this game.
Yeah, 43 pitches, 31 strikes, 8 of 12 first pitch strikes, 2 ground ball outs, and 4 fly ball outs.
And another positive note, Cianel Perez has allowed 0 runs, 2 hits, and 2 walks with 6 strikeouts in his last 6 innings. So if we have Perez playing better and Vespi not being Keegan Akin, they might have a couple decent lefties out of their bullpen.
Yeah, it's nice seeing Perez pitch well again.
Right. One thing I wanted to mention too is that I mentioned the O's. A lot of O's fans wanted Pablo Lopez in the offseason. He's a very good pitcher, but looking at what the Marlins got, Luis Arias, and he's currently hitting 389 after leading the AL with a 316 average last year. And I just don't think the O's could have reasonably offered a better current roster player than him, as far as a guy who was something the Marlins would want and would fit the O's timeline and not give them a huge hole in their lineup.
I agree. You're probably looking at Austin Hayes and something else or Cedric Mullins straight up.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think any O's fan would want to do that at this point. So it doesn't seem like a trade would have materialized, but it does seem like something that's really worked out for both teams. So props to them, I guess.
Ben McDonald was back with Kevin Brown and Jim Palmer. They made the most of this blowout. They were must watch TV. They saved the game from being unwatchable. They were doing shots at one time. McDonald was hanging out in the bird bath twice.
He probably came back from Omaha and was like, this is kind of boring compared to the College World Series. What can I do to spice this up a little?
Yeah, they were set up in the outfield, which was kind of cool too.
Yeah, that was neat. Do you have anything else from this game? Because I have one kind of irrelevant thing to say.
Yeah, all I have is this was 3 straight losses, the second time this season, and then Shaq was the post game concert.
Yes. What's he call himself? DJ Diesel?
Yeah, DJ Diesel.
Very nice. Yeah, that's fun. I mean, he's one of those people where I wouldn't even care if his music was good or not. It would be fun to just say you saw Shaq do a DJ set.
I saw a picture of him, Ben McDonald, after the game. They were holding up L's for LSU.
Yeah, they mentioned on one of the broadcasts that Ben McDonald and Shaq overlapped at LSU for like a year or two, maybe, or early '90s, somewhere around there, and they kind of like knew each other. So that's kind of neat.
Both former number 1 draft picks.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. So my irrelevant take is about the City Connect uniforms, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but I do not like them.
They're not
However,
growing on you.
they're not. But I want to say we've also discussed our disdain for the Maryland flag and how it's everywhere. But I think I'd rather have the flag pattern on that sleeve trim than the multicolored nonsense. I just think that's so silly and not unique. Like any city can slap a bunch of colors and be like, "Oh, we have different neighborhoods." I think if you at least put the Maryland flag trim, it's not overdoing it. It's unique, and you can tell that's a Baltimore thing. You know what I mean?
That's the only way the Maryland flag thing would have worked for me is if it was small like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my current hot take is I think the City Connect uniforms stink and the O's I don't know their record in them, but it seems like they lose most of the time. So I'd
I
rather
believe they're
have
1-4.
yeah, that's terrible. And it's not the uniform's fault, but you should at least look decent if you're going to be bad. And I think those are bad.
These
The
Saturday This Saturday night they came out with their orange jerseys and they look great.
I love the orange. Those are my favorite ones.
Yeah, and this was Bailey Ober versus Kyle Bradish. 6'9" Bailey Ober.
Yeah, I did not. I had heard Bailey Ober's name before and seen that he had good numbers. I'd never watched him before, and I did not know he was that big. That guy is huge.
Yeah, I had no idea either. This was the largest crowd since opening day.
Was that the Hawaiian shirt game?
Yep, and they're going for $30 to $50 on eBay.
Those things are popular for sure. So, after managing 4 hits on Friday, the O's had just 3 on Saturday, and they ended up losing this one 1-0. As you mentioned, Bailey Ober and Bradish, they both were great. Bailey Ober was better, but you can't fault Bradish at all. He went 6 innings, allowed just 1 run with 7 hits, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts.
Yeah, the one run was in the top of the fourth off a Joey Gallo 2-out full count 439-foot home run.
Yeah, that was a no doubter. Just a ball that was left up in the zone. And with a guy like Joey Gallo, he's not going to hit the ball all the time, but when he does, it usually goes far.
I have a note on Bradish here. Observation. He's always very even keeled. Like you can't really tell how he's doing on the mound, whether he's getting shelled or pitching great. I've noticed when Gibson is getting hit hard, he looks exasperated. When Kramer looks panicked when he starts getting hit. Tyler Wells looks angry.
Mm-hmm.
Grayson just looks straight up confused when he's getting banged around. And then Cole Irvin just looks happy to be there. He looks like he's happy not to be in Oakland or Norfolk.
What would be worse right now? I think I might rather, if you take out the paycheck, it might be better to be playing in Norfolk than Oakland right now.
Oh yeah, it has to be way more fun playing in Norfolk than Oakland. Norfolk is. I haven't gone to any games this week. I kind of took this homestand off just because I've been to so many games so far this year already. But they scored 15 runs yesterday.
Nice. Another good defensive play that Minnesota had was in the 9th inning. The O's got Adley on base, I believe, and Mateo was pinch running for him at first base. And Santander had a shot down the right field line, and Max Kepler robbed him, which was a great sliding catch, kind of into foul territory that would have landed fair and it would have tied the game.
Yeah, Mateo was called out initially, and they reviewed it. It was very close play.
Yeah. Wait, what called out where?
Mateo stole second, and he was called out, and
Oh,
then
yeah,
they
yeah.
reviewed it.
Right, right.
Yeah, but yeah, that catch Kepler made was amazing. It would have been a foul ball though.
Really? I thought it was going fair from what I saw.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then they had so much time to look at it. They determined that it would have been foul.
Oh, well, disregard what I said then. That's not interesting. It was still a nice catch.
Between Oh, it was a great catch. Yeah, between Bailey Ober and Logan Gilbert of the Mariners last week, the Orioles could have been no hit twice in the past week.
Yeah, I would say they're running into great pitchers, which, neither of those guys is bad, but the O's bats have definitely cooled off for sure.
How does Adley get so many infield hits?
I don't know. We've talked about how he's not especially fast. I think for a catcher he is, but not overall. That one was kind of an awkward infield hit where Duran, I think, was the pitcher and looked like he was trying to wait for it to go foul, but then picked it up at the last minute. I think if he had just went and grabbed the ball and threw it to first, he would have been out by 2 steps. But that was kind of a infield hit of the Twins' creation.
They had one final opportunity with 2 outs and a runner in scoring position for O'Hearn, and he just grounded to first to end the game.
Yeah, definitely squandered that opportunity as they did all game because they didn't score at all. But after Bradish, the O's bullpen was good. Bauman, Coulombe, and Cano came in and allowed no runs and no hits over the final 3 innings. And again, that was just a case of the O's not scoring. So, as a quick sidebar, that loss marked the conclusion of the first half of the season for the O's. Despite that outcome, the O's were 48 and 33 at the halfway point, which is 15 games over 500 for those of you who are bad at math. And going 500 the rest of the season, the O's would have 88 or 89 wins, which is very respectable. And to reach 90 wins, all they need to do is go 42 and 39, which is a 519 winning percentage. So the O's have really put themselves in a good spot after the first half, and there's definitely improvements to be made, but things could always be worse. And overall, I think any O's fan would tell you if you started the season and said there'll be 15 games over 500 halfway through, every single one of them is going to take that.
Speaking of things possibly being worse, Sunday's game led to two injuries: Austin Hayes and Jordan Westberg.
Yeah. I'm hoping the All Star break helps. I'm also hoping that Hayes is able to participate in the All Star game because that would be a huge bummer for him. But
Yeah, definitely.
we've also talked about how the O's have been relatively unscathed with injuries this year. I mean, Mullins missed a good amount of time. Their pitchers have been kind of hit or miss, but none of their big starters, I mean, big for the Orioles, have missed any time. Am I missing anybody that's missed like a decent chunk? Arias was out for a week or two, but Mullins is the only one that I can think of that's been a really full time solid contributor that's missed anything significant.
Yeah, the only ones I can think of are all relief pitchers, which are Tate and Givens, now Akin, and Austin Both.
Yeah, I'm going to say those latter two don't matter. And Tate hasn't pitched at all for the O's this year. Givens, I think they rushed back. So those four guys, I would say, they're kind of forgettable as far as the 2023 roster is concerned.
Givens got transferred to the 60-day IL last week.
Yeah, you could tell something was up with him, but I'd rather have him not pitching than trying to pitch when he's not fully healthy and getting annihilated, or in his case, not even being able to throw a strike.
Too bad they can't trade him for another Terran Vavra again.
Hey, maybe he could train to catch. Think he'd get another one of those.
Yeah, so this game was on Peacock on Sunday. I know I ask you this every time. Do you have Peacock?
Nope, didn't watch this game. I'm not buying Peacock just because the O's are on it a handful of times. They're not going to suck me into that.
Yeah, I watched it delayed. I was able to avoid the score all day and got to watch it on MLB TV.
Yeah. So this game was, I mentioned in the Twins preview, they really rely on winning low scoring games. And the Orioles had 3 and 4 hits in their previous 2 games in this series. And this game, they managed to get 5. So they're moving on up in the offensive world. But shockingly enough, it was enough for a victory. The O's won 2-1 on Sunday.
Yeah, Sonny Gray pitched for the Twins, and I've seen some Orioles fans suggest he could be traded. I don't think the Twins are going to trade Sonny Gray if they're leading the division.
Leading that division, I wouldn't, because all you need to do is get in the playoffs, and then you don't know what's going to happen. Even if they were like 8 games back in that division at this point, I would say if I was a Twins fan, keep him because you never know what's going to happen in the AL Central.
Yeah, he was very good. They showed a stat. He's only allowing .31 home runs per 9 innings. That's the lowest in the major leagues. 3 home runs and 16 starts.
He's been excellent this year. His ERA was lowered to 2.5 after this game. He threw 6 innings, allowed no runs with only 2 hits, 3 walks, and 7 strikeouts.
And then Mullins made a great catch in the first inning off Buxton. Buxton had to tip his hat to him as he walked to the dugout.
Yeah, that was the second time Buxton was robbed by a great catch this series. the previous one being Hayes that I mentioned. And you know what? I went back and looked at that Mullins replay, and it reminded me of that catch that Griffey made where he broke his wrist in the outfield. Now, one thing I either forgot or just didn't ever know was that when he went out and made that catch, he Griffey broke his left wrist, which was his throwing hand. But it looked on the replay like he broke his right wrist on his glove because it looked like he kind of mashed that into the wall. But anyways, that's what that Mullins catch reminded me of because it looked like he caught that with his right hand facing downward and then ran into the wall. So that was what came to mind.
Yeah, they mentioned that catch during the broadcast and actually showed it.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, Ben McDonald brought it up, I believe.
All right. Well, I'm just as good as Ben McDonald at analyzing baseball games, right?
Yeah, he's a friend of the show.
Yeah. So that was a great catch. Buxton has not had a phenomenal year. He's been good, but he could have had two more extra base hits, especially with his speed. Both of those could have been triples, I think, if they weren't caught.
And this was another first inning that Cole Irvin narrowly averted disaster. Mullins' catch had a huge part to do with that. They were able to strand the bases loaded.
Yeah, Cole Irvin did a respectable job this game. I think if you look at the peripherals, he allowed 6 hits and 3 walks in only 5 innings, which is not good. But the Twins only scored once off him. He only had 1 strikeout. So I guess you can say it was an okay start. I don't know how to characterize that. Like, what the amount of runs scored is what really matters in winning ball games. But if you don't do that well and they just happen to not score, does that mean you're good?
And he set the bar so low with his first 3 starts in the season. He looks like Cy Young compared to his first 3 starts, even though they don't trust him. They won't let him throw past the 5th inning. He's getting hit pretty hard in these starts, but he's keeping the runs down low. So they need him, especially with Kyle Gibson struggles.
Yeah, I guess in a way it means he's throwing strikes if he's allowing 6 hits with only 1 strikeout in 5 innings. But he did walk 3 guys. But, they won the game. So I guess for Sunday, July 2nd, we'll take Cole Irvin's outing.
And then Mullins batted 5th in this lineup with Adley was leadoff. They showed a stat that Mullins is 4 for 24 since returning from his injury, but that's not affecting his defense at all. The abductor strain?
Abductor, adductor, I don't remember which. It was in his groin, one of those things.
Yeah, he was running wild in center field. He made a couple nice plays.
Yeah, no, he's one of those guys who, even if he's not hitting that well, is definitely going to contribute with his glove. So you can always count on Mullins having a positive impact. I think he's not going to screw anything up in the field, even if he's kind of on a cold streak.
They showed a Peacock trivia question for this game. So since you don't have Peacock, I'm able to ask you this and you don't know the answer.
All right.
Correa and Buxton are the 4th set of players drafted 1st and 2nd overall in the same draft to eventually play together on the same team. Who are the other 3 sets of players? I'll give you hints because this is tough. It's really tough.
That is tough.
The 99 Orioles are one of the teams, the 2001 Devil Rays, and then the 2017 Orioles.
2 of them are the Orioles. Oh, man.
The 2 Orioles from the 99 team were both drafted in 1985.
Surhoff was a first pick, wasn't he?
Yep.
Second pick in 85 that was on the 99 Orioles. Was it a pitcher?
He wasn't on the
pitcher or position player?
first baseman.
For Will Clark?
Will Clark.
All right. And then the 01 Rays?
Yeah, this one's impossible. They were drafted in 1994.
94. Ben Grieve.
Wow, yeah.
Was he first or second?
He was second by Oakland.
Okay, so the 94 first pick. Was he drafted by Tampa or someone else?
Drafted by the Mets, former Tide.
Mets, former Tide. I'm probably not going to get this. I'm not sure. What is it?
Paul Wilson.
Yeah, would have never guessed that. I remember that guy. And the 2017 O's.
Yeah, this one's tough
First
too.
and second. So was Machado wasn't second, right? Was he third?
Yeah, he was third.
Okay, but I think Harper was picked first. So that wouldn't have been it. Delming Young.
No, that's a good guess though. One of the players was drafted by the Rays. The other one was drafted by the Pirates.
Beckham.
Yep, Tim Beckham.
And then Pirates.
Another former Tide.
Not coming to me.
Vanderbilt, third baseman.
Oh, Pedro Alvarez.
Yep.
Okay.
Got it. That's pretty good. That Ben Grieve one. I should PayPal you some money. That was I couldn't believe you got that.
Well, you had to give me hints on all the other ones, so yeah, that is tough. Especially if you're sitting there watching a game. Who's gonna know that?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. They mentioned Tim Beckham was on the Twins last year. I did not know that.
I don't think I
I
did
thought
either.
he was out of baseball.
Right. I thought he was out of baseball like 3-4 years ago.
Right. He was exciting when he first got to the Orioles. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he was a good. He was one of those guys that you could tell had all the physical tools and just didn't really hit the ball. Anyways, where were we with this one? We were talking about. Oh yeah, so Adley had the infield hit, and Santander singled him to third to put runners on the corners with one out. And this was all after the O's had 2 hits and no runs until the 8th inning. So despite winning this game 2-1, they basically did nothing for 7 innings.
Yeah, Hicks got the RBI single to tie it up at 1, and that brought up Jordan Westberg to try and win the game.
That was after an intentional walk to Ryan O RBIs.
Oh yeah, and he had a 3-0 count. And they were like, just go to first.
Yeah, they knew ORBIs was gonna have the green light, so they walked him, and then Westberg got nailed. Like looked like what, the wrist or the top of the hand, I think.
Yeah, it looked like it hurt. It reminded me of that Simpsons episode, the softball game one, where Homer got hit in the head with the bases loaded, and the team celebrated around him as he was knocked out.
Yeah, no, did not see that, but yeah, that was the second run of the game, and then the bullpen overall was good. Baker, Perez, and Bautista allowed no hits or walks over the final 4 innings, and I thought it was really impressive. Bautista struck out the side. The last pitch of the game was 103 on the inside corner. Like, I don't know how you hit that unless you start your swing when he's like starting his windup.
Yeah, the bullpen was great. I have them as my second star. The bullpen was pretty good this week.
Yeah, this whole series against the Twins, albeit they're a weaker offensive team, but the bullpen allowed 1 earned run, which was Buxton's homer off Zimmerman, over 13 innings by my count. So they were excellent against Minnesota. Do you have 3 stars?
3 of the Yeah,
or sorry, did you want to mention something else before that?
I have a bunch of I have way too many notes on this one, especially for a 2-1 game or whatever it was. Yeah. There was a bunch of missed opportunities. Mullins was up with 2 on and 1 out, and he hit a line drive that was snagged by Kirilloff.
Yeah.
To save some runs. Kirilloff wasn't even the starting first baseman. I think their Solano was injured on that same play that Hayes was injured on.
I don't know if Kirilloff even is a regular first baseman. I've always thought of him as an outfielder. Now, I've also never been a regular Twins watcher, but that was a great play. That was a shot down the line. That was like a Rios on the third base line in that first game against Cincinnati, where it was like a guaranteed extra base hit, and he just made a great play.
Yeah, where it would have just busted the game open.
Right.
Yeah, the 3 stars. I got Aaron Hicks off the bench to replace Hayes. He tied the game up, went 1 for 3. Second, I got Jordan Westberg at the game-winning RBI, and then number one is the bullpen. 4 innings pitched, no hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts.
Yeah, they were very good. Now, while you were just saying that, I pulled up on MLB.com team stats for runners in scoring position. I'm actually shocked at this. The Orioles are 8th in the majors in batting average with runners in scoring position. Maybe that's just me being biased as a fan and like only thinking of the times where they failed, but that's way higher than I thought they would be. I thought they'd be bottom half easily.
Yeah, they're up there in runs scored too, where it doesn't feel like it. At least they were like 2 weeks ago. They were eighth,
Let's see if I can pull that up.
and especially this past week, where they're getting 2 runs, 1 run.
Right. Seasons, team stats, runs per game. Baseball Reference has them at 9th right now. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's hard to believe.
it really is. It's also kind of surprising that they're 9th, but a whole run ahead of them, the Texas Rangers are leading the league. So it's basically like Rangers, Braves, Rays, Dodgers, and then everyone else.
So who do we got this week? I know we got the Yankees.
Yeah, so coming up, the O's go for 4 games at Yankee Stadium, Monday through Thursday, and then off to Minnesota against a familiar opponent for 3 more with no days off this week.
Yeah, the Twins are annoying.
I've always kind of rooted for the Twins, at least when they had the Rochester affiliation. And I remember those years, it seemed like they played the Yankees in the playoffs in the division series every year, and they just got beat by the Yankees every single time. But, like, especially because they were playing the Yankees, I was hoping that the Twins would win, and they just never did. They always got crushed.
Yeah, the Twins affiliation now is with the St. Paul Saints, which is right next door to them.
Right. It makes tons of sense for them. I don't think St. Paul Saints were even a real minor league team. They were an independent league team for a while, right?
Yeah, forever. They would always get guys trying to make their way back. I believe Daryl Strawberry played for him.
I didn't JD Drew play for them in the year where he got drafted and didn't sign with, I think it was Philly, and then he played independent ball for St. Paul and then got drafted again by St. Louis, I want to say.
Strawberry played 29 games in 1996. He hit 435, blasting 18 home runs in 29 games while trying to resurrect his career.
Wow. I mean,
What did JD Drew do? JD Drew hit 341 with 18 home runs. It doesn't say how many games or at bats or anything like that. Oh, 44 games in 1997.
okay. Yeah, so my grandmother has a family friend who was a bullpen catcher for the Cardinals back in the day. His name was Jeff Murphy. And I remember hearing a story where they played a game at Philly, and all the Philly fans knew, and being Philly fans hated JD Drew for not signing with them and would throw things at him and stuff. So Jeff Murphy wore JD Drew's uniform, like his jersey, during warm ups or batting practice or something, just so JD Drew wouldn't get stuff thrown at him. And they didn't know enough that like that was clearly not him. If you look at the two guys, they really don't look alike. So
Yeah, he should have got hazard pay or something for
right,
that.
typical Philly fans. One thing we mentioned very briefly at the beginning, but didn't expound upon, is that Gunnar Henderson was named the June AL Rookie of the Month, and Felix Bautista was the June AL Reliever of the Month.
Yeah, Gunnar had a great month.
Yeah, he did. I've got his numbers in front of me. You want to hear them?
Yeah, let's hear him.
So in 20 games, Gunnar Henderson had 6 homers, 16 RBIs, 3 steals with a 320 batting average and a 994 OPS. Felix Bautista in the month of June pitched 10 games, faced 39 batters. He allowed 1 home run, no walks, 22 strikeouts. He did hit 1 batter with a 158 batting average against. I was shocked when I thought 22 strikeouts, no walks. He allowed 6 hits in 38 at bats. He allowed 1 run 1 double, 1 homer, 2 steals, a 180 on
Yeah,
base
anytime.
percentage.
Not many guys can get on against him, but when they do, they're usually stealing.
Yeah, he doesn't have a fast windup, but whatever, who cares?
And then Gunnar is still batting leadoff some, even though Mullins is back.
Yeah, I mean Gunnar can move. We've talked about that too. He had a nice play tonight when I was watching earlier. I have no clue what the score is, but he scored a nice run on a he was on first base on a double and scored a run. Don't want to give away anything to you, but at least you know the O's scored at least once.
Yeah, I'll be watching tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I mean the only thing Gunnar doesn't have is that split against left-handers, but that's something that'll come. He's currently hitting 189 against lefties with no home runs and 2 RBIs with an 527 OPS. But against righties, he has an 872 OPS. So those are things he'll get better at, hopefully.
There was a called strike in this twin series, and Gunnar was very upset about it, and he took a long time to get back into the box. He called timeout, but he still was in no rush to get in the box. He's starting to get more comfortable as a major leaguer, I think.
Yeah, those moments always kind of worry me, knowing how umpires can be when there's a young guy who's showing his displeasure, however subtly or not, that you kind of hope that he doesn't just get on the bad side of umpires.
Yeah, he was just shaking his head, just giving him a look like, "How dare you? I know the strike zone better than you."
I was actually, speaking of that, I was talking with my dad this week and we were talking about baseball, and I mentioned the clip from earlier this year. It was like Mississippi Valley State against New Orleans college baseball. You may have seen this, where the last batter of the game was up and the umpire called a low strike that the batter didn't like, and he kind of complained about it more than one should, but he got back in the box. It was 2 strikes, and then the next pitch, I swear, was like on the ground and a foot outside, and the umpire called it strike 3 just to show him up. And I think the umpire either got fired or suspended. It was so ridiculous. But
Yeah, I do remember seeing that.
yeah, and that was the last strike of the game. So those are the types of things where clearly that won't happen in the major leagues, but at the same time, you don't want umpires at least thinking like that with a young guy.
Yeah, so all I got left is the apology. You got anything else?
No, I think that's it. Who do you got?
I got the 1985 American League Rookie of the Year, 3-time All-Star in 1988, 1990, and 1991. Manager of the 2005 World Series champion Chicago White Sox, Ozzie Guillen.
Ozzie Guillen. Did I forget he played for the O's? How long was he there?
Yes, you did. He signed as a free agent on January 29th, 1998. He had 16 at-bats in 12 games. He batted .063 with 1 hit and was released on May 1st.
Wow, so he was gone by May?
Yeah, he signed in 1998, and the article I found was the Orioles were very upfront with him. I guess Guillen came to the Orioles expressing a desire to play for them because remember they were coming off the 97 playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And the Orioles told him to keep looking. We don't really have a spot for you. He was signed to a minor league contract, and yeah, it was a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, he won that World Series, but it seems like he kind of became a disaster himself after that.
Yeah, he currently does pre and post game for the White Sox games on NBC Sports Chicago.
Yeah, Ozzie Guillen's always been kind of a ridiculous person, if you ask me, but he's entertaining at least. And I definitely forget that the White Sox won that World Series. Like, if you ask me the teams that have won a World Series in the last 20 years, I would probably completely forget the White Sox.
He actually interviewed for the White Sox managerial job this past offseason, too.
Better than Tony La Russa at this point.
Yeah, good old Tony.
So the one I'm going to go with is Rick Krivda. I picked him because he was a Rochester Red Wing for a time. He ended up making 34 starts for the O's, going 9-14 with a 5.13 ERA. You know Pennsylvania better than me, but he is from McKeesport, and he went to Pennsylvania Western University in California, Pennsylvania. I don't know anything about those places, but I remember Rick Krivda in Rochester, so I'm going with him.
Yeah, McKeesport is outside Pittsburgh. I've never heard of Pennsylvania Western University.
Yep, that's who I got. Rick Krivda was pretty solid in AAA. He had an ERA in the threes most of the time and was one of those guys who was just not cut out to be a major league pitcher, it seems like.
It looks like he was on the 2000 Australian Olympic team.
Okay, that's interesting.
Nope, I'm wrong. It just said Sydney Olympics, but it looks like he was on the 2000 Olympic team.
So that was definitely before they had. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't even know who plays. They don't even play baseball in the Olympics anymore, right?
No, that's why the World Baseball Classic started,
Right.
which is doing great.
Yeah, that's way more fun.
Yeah, Krivda took the team's lone loss, a 6-1 defeat by Cuba. Krivda allowed 5 hits, a walk, and 2 runs in 2 innings. It was his only appearance in the Olympics.
Bummer. Yeah, he was good with Rochester. He played there for parts of 5 years and won, I don't know, close to 40 games.
He played in the independent leagues too. He played for the Somerset Patriots,
Mm-hmm.
who are now affiliated. They're the Yankees affiliate
Yeah, I was
now.
going to say, I know that name. Well,
But yeah, that's it for episode 15.
that is all. We're hoping for a better record this week than the 2-4 that the O's showed us this week, and we'll talk to you then.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th. Take care.